Athena 1, a space station owned by the genetic engineering corporation Energyne. Scientists are conducting illegal experiments involving genetic editing using CRISPR technology. These experiments aim to create weaponized animals with enhanced strength, size, and aggression. One of their experiments, a pathogen that alters DNA, has disastrous effects, resulting in mutated, aggressive creatures. A mutated rat escapes containment, wreaking havoc on the station. As the station explodes, Dr. Carrie Atkins manages to secure canisters containing the genetic pathogen. Energyne CEO Claire Wyden orders her to return the samples, but the escape pod explodes during re-entry, scattering the canisters across North America. Davis Okoye is a primatologist and former Special Forces soldier with a deep bond with George, a rare albino gorilla he rescued from poachers. Davis communicates with George using sign language, showcasing the gorilla's intelligence and their unique friendship. One of the pathogen containers lands in George's enclosure at the San Diego Wildlife Sanctuary. One canister is swallowed by an American crocodile in the Everglades and another lands in a Wyoming forest where a wolf is exposed to the pathogen. When George is exposed to the pathogen, he grows rapidly and exhibits aggressive behavior. At Energyne's headquarters in Chicago, CEO Claire Wyden and her brother Brett monitor the situation. Claire reveals that they deliberately engineered the pathogen to weaponize animals and plan to retrieve samples to sell to the military. As George grows considerably larger and becomes more aggressive, Davis is contacted by genetic engineer Dr. Kate Caldwell, who explains that Energyne developed the pathogen to rewrite genes on a massive scale. She had hoped to advance research on CRISPR as a potential cure for diseases. Still, she discovered Energyne's plans to use it as a biological weapon and was falsely incarcerated, during which her terminally ill brother died. George escapes from his enclosure after a violent outburst and is captured by government agents led by Agent Harvey Russell. Burke and his team are heavily armed and confident in their ability to capture a wolf named Ralph. They are dropped off in a dense Wyoming forest where the wolf has already been sighted. Burke and his team are initially dismissive of the threat, believing their weapons and tactical training make them superior. They underestimate Ralph, thinking he is merely a larger-than-usual predator. As they trek through the forest, the team discovers signs of Ralph's presence, massive claw marks on trees, and scattered remains of other animals. These clues reveal Ralph's enormous size and strength, creating a tense atmosphere. However, they are unable to spot him, as Ralph uses his enhanced agility and intelligence to stay hidden in the forest. Ralph initiates a surprise attack. Despite their heavy firepower, the team's weapons are ineffective against Ralph's thick hide and relentless attacks. Burke tries to take a stand. He sets up a large-caliber weapon, hoping to kill Ralph. However, the wolf leaps onto Burke from above, killing him in a single, brutal attack. A government team led by Agent Harvey Russell captures George and transports him on a military plane. Davis tries to explain George's condition, but the military sees him as a threat. They plan to secure George and move him to a containment facility where he can no longer pose a threat. Claire Wyden, the CEO of Energyne, plans to use a transmitter atop the Willis Tower in Chicago to lure the mutated animals. This plan is part of her strategy to cover up Energyne's unethical experiments and eliminate any threats to her company, particularly targeting Dr. Kate Caldwell, who poses a risk due to her knowledge of Energyne's operations. Claire and Brett activate a beacon atop their Chicago headquarters to lure the mutated animals to the city, hoping to recover DNA samples for further experiments. The transmitter emits low-frequency radio signals that the genetically modified creatures are engineered to respond to aggressively. As the signal activates, George, who had been sedated and transported on a military plane, wakes up and breaks free from his restraints. Davis is also on the plane, accompanied by government agent Harvey Russell and a group of military personnel. In a panic, he attacks the military personnel on board. George, now enormous, enraged, and uncontrollable, his massive size and strength make the confined space of the plane a dangerous battleground. Davis tries to calm George using their bond, but it's clear that the pathogen's effects are overwhelming the gorilla's rationality. During this chaos, explosives are accidentally detonated, creating a massive hole in the plane and causing it to crash in Chicago. The cargo plane crashes just outside of Chicago, scattering debris across a large area. but Davis and Russell manage to survive by parachuting out moments before the impact. After surviving the crash, Davis and Russell realize the gravity of the situation. Davis is determined to save George and stop the other mutated creatures, while Russell becomes more cooperative, recognizing the scale of the impending disaster. After the crash, George escapes into the city, followed closely by Ralph, the mutated wolf. Following the catastrophic events triggered by the mutations, including George's rampage at the wildlife preserve and subsequent chaos in Chicago, the military takes control of the situation. As part of their response, they detain Davis and Kate for questioning regarding their knowledge of the events and any potential involvement with Energyne. During their detention at Scott Air Force Base, Davis and Kate realize that they need to escape to prevent further chaos from unfolding due to Energyne's plans. They manage to knock out 2 military police officers escorting them. With Agent Russell's reluctant support, they steal a military medical helicopter to pursue George and address the crisis in Chicago directly. As they approach Chicago, Davis and Kate witness the sheer scale of destruction caused by George and Ralph, the mutated wolf. The situation worsens when a third mutated creature, Lizzie, a giant crocodile, joins George and Ralph. The 3 creatures are converging on the city, leaving devastation in their wake. This complicates the military's efforts as they now face 3 formidable threats simultaneously. The military attempts various tactics to engage with George and Ralph, including using heavy artillery and attempting to evacuate civilians from affected areas. However, their efforts are hampered by the creature's destructive capabilities. As the chaos escalates, the military considers deploying a Moab, massive ordnance air blast, bomb to eliminate the threats posed by George, Ralph, and Lizzie. Planning to steal an antidote to turn the animals back to normal, Davis and Kate infiltrate Energyne's base of operations at the tower and take several vials of it, but are caught by the Wydens as Claire reveals that the antidote only eliminates the animal's enhanced aggressiveness rather than reversing the pathogen's effects altogether, and shoots Davis. But he survives. When George climbs to the top of the tower, Claire orders Davis to distract him while she attempts to escape with Kate at gunpoint. Kate slips a vial into Claire's handbag and pushes her toward George, who swallows her whole along with the vial, returning him to his former personality. Down below, Russell takes incriminating evidence from Brett, who is then crushed to death by falling debris. As the creatures converge on the skyscraper, their immense size and strength cause the building to collapse. As the damaged tower topples, Davis and Kate survive by crash-landing a helicopter on the Federal Plaza. The antidote begins to take effect, calming George and restoring some of his rationality. This moment marks a turning point in the battle, as George begins to recognize Davis again. Meanwhile, Ralph and Lizzie, still under the influence of the signal, continue their rampage through the city. Davis, now reunited with George, prepares for an all-out battle against the other 2 creatures. He knows that George, even in his mutated state, is the only chance to stop Ralph and Lizzie before the military launches the airstrike. With George on his side, Davis devises a plan to take on the other 2 creatures. George immediately charges at Ralph, engaging in a brutal one-on-one fight. Ralph, enhanced by the pathogen, has grown massive and developed unique abilities, including quills he can shoot as projectiles and extreme agility. As George and Ralph fight, Lizzie, the mutated crocodile, makes her terrifying entrance. Lizzie is by far the largest and most dangerous of the creatures, with thick, armored skin, massive jaws, and a spiked tail that she uses as a deadly weapon. Davis tries to distract and weaken the creatures. He uses the grenade launcher to target Ralph. He tricks Ralph into charging at him while simultaneously leading him toward Lizzie. He inadvertently runs into Lizzie's path. In a swift and brutal moment, Lizzie uses her powerful jaws to behead Ralph, killing him instantly. This shocking turn of events highlights the unpredictability and danger of the mutated creatures. With Ralph dead, the focus shifts to stopping Lizzie, who is even more destructive and unstoppable. Lizzie proves to be a nearly indestructible force, tearing through everything in her path and overpowering both George and the military forces. This forces him to rely on strategy rather than firepower. Davis uses a downed military helicopter as a makeshift weapon, luring Lizzie into a trap. He fires at her to get her attention and leads her into a vulnerable position. He plans to give George the chance to land a decisive blow. Despite his injuries, George musters the strength to fight Lizzie. In the climactic moment, George impales Lizzie on a sharp metal structure, killing her and finally ending the rampage. The fight leaves George exhausted and gravely wounded. After the battle, Davis rushes to George's side, fearing he might not survive. George initially pretends to be dead, playing a prank on Davis, but then reveals he is alive. The two share a heartfelt moment, highlighting their unbreakable bond. With the creatures defeated, the military calls off the airstrike and the city begins to recover. Davis and George stand amidst the rubble, with Davis reflecting on their victory and George playfully interacting with him.
If you enjoyed diving deep into the story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated.